Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dark Sleep Radio. Here on this channel, I share real-life encounters with beings from beyond the skies to help you unwind and drift off to sleep before we dive in. I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. Now find a comfortable spot, relax, and let's begin. I've been night fishing on this lake for decades. It's a tradition, a peaceful routine I've always loved. Just me, the water, and the stars. 2 summers back, something changed. That night was different. The lake was empty. No other boats, just the gentle water sounds and occasional fish splashing. The full moon painted silver streaks across the dark surface, and a crisp night air settled around me. My lantern flickered softly, and a quiet radio played in the background. Frogs croaked, an owl hooted, typical lake sounds. Just after midnight, something felt off. A strange pressure crept into my thoughts. At first, I dismissed it as fatigue, but then I heard it, a soft, unplaceable hum. Not like a boat engine, not like anything I'd heard before. It seemed to vibrate through the water and air, without a clear source. Fog started rolling in from the shoreline, thick tendrils creeping across the water. The moonlight still illuminated my immediate surroundings, but something wasn't right. The hum grew louder, more constant. Then I saw them. Small, round lights floating directly on the water's surface. Impossible to explain. They just were there, lantern-like, but not attached to anything. Something was definitely happening on my quiet lake that night. I was out fishing when something strange caught my eye. At first, I thought maybe I was seeing things or other fishermen had unusual lights. But the more I stared, the clearer it became. These weren't normal lights. They hovered just above the water, moving in a perfect, calculated circle around my boat. Not like fireflies or random insects. These moved with purpose, steady, intentional. 3 orbs became 4, then 5, each floating in a small arc just above the surface. No sound, just a soft blue glow cutting through the mist. My heart raced. I tried convincing myself it was some natural phenomenon, maybe bioluminescent algae. But deep down, I knew that wasn't right. These things were too deliberate. When I tried my flashlight, nothing happened. The beam wouldn't cut through the fog, almost as if the light was being blocked. The orbs continued their silent, methodical movement. A cold shiver ran down my spine. They weren't just floating, they were studying something, mapping. The way they rotated around me suggested something far beyond my understanding. One orb dipped lower. I felt a strange pressure, like the atmosphere was changing. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to make the air feel different. Suddenly, it darted back up. The hum I'd been hearing grew louder, as if something deep beneath the water had awakened, something ancient, something that had been there long before me. I'm not proud of how scared I was, but I wasn't going to sit there and wait. I started pulling in my fishing line, trying to act normal, trying to ignore the fear churning in my stomach. Just get the gear in, turn the boat around, and leave. But the orbs were faster than I could move. The lake was eerily quiet that night, but something felt off. Strange lights began to appear around my boat, moving in closer. These weren't ordinary lights. They pulsed with a rhythmic, almost living quality that sent chills down my spine. Beneath the water's surface, barely visible under the moonlight, a massive shape was moving. The orbs seemed to communicate with something deep in the lake, darting and circling with an intelligence that felt unnatural. They studied the movement below, hovering like tiny probes, more alive than anything I'd ever seen. Panic took over. Without thinking, I grabbed my paddle and started pushing forward, my hands shaking. The orbs followed, their lights bobbing and shifting in a silent surveillance that felt endless. I was desperate to escape whatever was happening. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, the orbs began to pull away. One by one, they drifted back, into the fog, the humming sound fading until the night returned to its previous stillness. My boat felt lighter, but a deep sense of unease remained. I didn't look back. I paddled with urgency, cutting through the water toward the shore. When I finally reached the dock, I couldn't get off the lake fast enough. The next day, I returned to the spot. Everything was normal, calm water, still air, as if nothing had happened. But I knew what I'd seen. Those things weren't from this world, and I wasn't supposed to witness them. Now, every time I visit the lake, I can't shake the feeling that they're still out there, watching, waiting. I don't fish at night anymore, and I've never told anyone about what I experienced. Some things are better left unspoken. The cold silence of Antarctica had been my workplace for months, part of a research team tracking climate patterns. Our work was typically routine, collecting ice cores, measuring gases, important but rarely thrilling. Then everything changed. We were 10 people stationed at an isolated research base, surrounded by endless white. 2 years of careful drilling had brought us to something extraordinary. About 20 kilometers from our main station, our radar had detected an unusual shape deep beneath the ice, 300 meters down. Something wasn't right. The anomaly was too perfect, too symmetrical to be natural. Sharp angles and precise lines emerged as we dug deeper, hinting at something deliberately constructed. When we finally broke through, what we discovered defied explanation. A hollow space opened before us, its walls smooth and almost polished, yet not like rock or ice. They felt metallic but impossibly cold, with a thin, breathable atmosphere that shouldn't have existed. No signs explained how this space maintained its structure under tons of ancient ice. At the chamber's center stood a structure resembling a small aircraft hangar. Strange symbols covered the walls, faintly glowing and pulsing like a living heartbeat. No seams, no rivets, no comprehensible method of construction were visible. I know what we saw that day. Something was watching us, studying the lake, and we were just a tiny part of something much larger. Years later, I still think about it constantly, knowing most would never believe my story. A massive teardrop-shaped object loomed in the chamber, its metallic surface gleaming like the surrounding walls. But this was no ordinary structure. It seemed alive, radiating an energy that vibrated through our bones. We approached cautiously, keeping our distance. No one wanted to disturb something that had been buried for an unknown length of time. Instead, we documented everything meticulously, taking photographs and collecting ice samples from around the vessel. As hours passed, an unsettling sensation grew. The low hum wasn't just a sound anymore. It was penetrating my mind, resonating in a way I couldn't shake. When we reported our findings, the research organization's leadership quickly responded, sending instructions to investigate further. Within a week, a team of engineers arrived with specialized equipment. Their first task was to breach the vessel's hull using a high-powered laser. The moment they began cutting, everything changed. The hum intensified dramatically, transforming into a vibration that shook the entire chamber. Symbols on the walls started shifting and rearranging themselves, as if reacting to our actions. A strange pressure built in my chest, and the air seemed to thin. Suddenly, the vessel split open on its own, revealing a circle of about a dozen pods. Each was filled with a clear liquid, suspending beings that were definitely not human. Tall, with elongated limbs and smooth, pale skin, they had large dark eyes and sharp, almost insect-like features. They appeared preserved, as if in a deep sleep. The engineers continued their work, taking samples and analyzing the liquid, seemingly oblivious to the growing tension. With each disturbance, the hum grew louder, more intense. By the second day, the chamber felt electrically charged, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. On the third day, everything changed. The beings awoke. From the main station, we received a panicked radio transmission that sent chills down our spines. The signal cut out before the beings could explain anything. We tried to reach them, but there was only static. A group of us suited up and drove out to the site, only to find the chamber empty. The vessel remained, but the pods were open, and both the beings and engineers had vanished. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no footprints in the snow outside, just nothing. We didn't stay long. The hum grew louder, more intense, and the wall symbols flashed in cycling patterns that made my head throb. We packed up what we could and left. In the weeks that followed, strange occurrences began to multiply. Lights danced in the sky, shadows moved where they shouldn't exist. Equipment failed constantly, and the local wildlife disappeared, seals and penguins simply gone. Some team members claimed to hear whispers carried on the wind. I never heard those voices. What haunted me was something more insidious, the constant sensation of being watched, even when completely alone. The organization eventually shut down the station. They called it a logistical decision, but we all understood the unspoken truth. Whatever we had discovered was never meant to be found. I left Antarctica. The memories were too raw, too fresh. Even now, halfway across the world, I sometimes feel that faint, distant hum, waiting. My security job at a small office complex had always been routine. Tuesday night started like any other shift. Walking the property, monitoring CCTV cameras in a 3-floor building with a parking lot and a few storage sheds. Most nights passed uneventfully, filled with stale coffee and old magazine pages. Around 2:15 a.m., everything changed. 12 screens covered various angles: hallways, parking lot, entrances. Camera 8 monitored the quiet rear lot by the sheds, an area rarely used, where motion-activated floodlights seldom illuminated. Something caught my eye. A faint shimmer appeared near one shed, like a heat wave or water ripple. At first, I assumed it was a camera glitch. The night was eerily still when I first noticed something strange. My eyes strained against the camera screen, trying to make sense of the shape moving near the sheds. It wasn't quite human, tall and narrow, but constantly shifting like something unsure of its own form. The thing pulsed faintly, almost as if breathing. Instinctively, I started cycling through camera modes. Night vision revealed nothing unusual, just grainy images of the sheds. Infrared showed a blank screen, as if whatever was out there wasn't generating any heat. But ultraviolet changed everything. Suddenly, it became visible. A liquid-like figure emerged, tall and thin, with a body that seemed to flow and change. Its surface shimmered with colors like oil on water, no face visible. Just a smooth, reflective surface where a head should be. The arms were impossibly long, bending at unnatural angles that defied normal anatomy. It stood near the shed, slowly moving its head as if surveying the area. Then it crouched, pressing what looked like a hand against the ground. Motionless, studying something. My mind raced with possibilities. Calling the police seemed ridiculous. Who would believe me? The figure moved with an almost supernatural grace, floating just above the ground. It drifted toward the main building, pausing occasionally to touch random objects. A patch of grass, a parked car, the wall's surface. I switched between cameras, tracking its progress. In normal light, it was near, lie invisible, just a faint distortion in the air. Only ultraviolet revealed its true form. At the lobby's glass doors, it stopped. For a moment, it tilted its head as if listening. Then, impossibly, it simply passed through the glass, as if solid matter meant nothing. My heart raced. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Whatever this was, I knew I didn't want to encounter it directly. I was working the night shift in the control room when I first saw it. The lobby camera caught something moving, its body rippling like water under sunlight. It crept toward the reception desk, crouching and touching the floor, then turned its head toward the camera. I swear it saw me. Somehow, it knew I was watching. The smooth, faceless head tilted slightly, and for a moment, everything stopped. Completely still, like a statue. Then it moved again, faster this time, heading to the elevators. I panicked. My control room was on the second floor, and if it got inside the building, I had no idea what it might do. I locked the door and grabbed my flashlight. Not that I thought it would help, but I needed something to hold on to. The elevator screen showed it moving up, and the hallway camera confirmed its approach. It floated out, shimmering like a living mirage, long arms brushing against the walls. It stopped right outside my door. Clutching the flashlight like a weapon, I held my breath. The thing stood motionless, then slowly raised a hand and pressed it against the door. No sound came, but the air changed. The room's pressure shifted. After a moment, it lowered its hand and turned away. I watched on the monitor as it drifted back down the hall, into the elevator, and out of the building. It didn't stop until reaching the property's edge, then vanished into the night. I sat frozen for hours. When sunrise came, I replayed the footage, hoping daylight would make it less terrifying. The ultraviolet images remained crystal clear. The next morning, I showed my supervisor the video, but when we pulled up the files, only normal footage remained. Empty hallways and a quiet parking lot. My supervisor told me to take some time off, said I looked tired. A week later, I quit. I couldn't shake the feeling this wasn't our last encounter. Sometimes, late at night, I catch a shimmer from the corner of my eye, just for a second. I don't know if it's my imagination or if it's still watching. All I know is I'm never going back to that building. I was flying a routine patrol that night over the northern plains. The sky a vast canvas of stars. Nights like these are a pilot's dream. Clear air, no turbulence, and a horizon that seems to stretch forever. Our three-plane squadron was cruising at 30,000 feet, spread out in a loose V formation. Everything felt normal. The engines hummed softly, and occasional radio chatter broke the silence. I was scanning my instruments when something strange began to happen. At first, it was just a faint sound, like radio interference, the kind of static you get when communications aren't quite right. But this was different. The sound had a pattern, a rhythm, almost like music, but not any melody I'd ever heard before. "Tower, this is Echo 1, I radioed. "I'm picking up a strange signal. Any weather anomalies?" "Only static," answered me. My squad mates noticed too. "You're cutting out," Ramirez called from my left. Morales confirmed from the right. Signals breaking up. Then the sound transformed. It wasn't just a hum anymore. It had depth, layers, impossible instruments, and voices weaving together into something too perfect to be natural. The music seemed to pull at me, tugging at memories and feelings I couldn't name. It filled my headset, pushing everything else aside. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yeah, I hear it," Ramirez responded. Morales added, his voice tight. "What is that? Is it music?" We couldn't explain it, but we all felt it. The melody came from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating in our bones. Then I saw something, a glimmer ahead and below us, like moonlight dancing on water. "There's something out there," I said, leaning forward. 9 below. "Do you see it?" "Got it," Ramirez replied. "What the hell is that?" We broke formation slightly, turning toward the mysterious shimmer in the darkness. The silvery craft hovered ahead, its surface impossibly smooth and organic. No sharp edges, no seams, just a faint pulsing glow that seemed to synchronize with an otherworldly music filling our cockpits. We approached cautiously, spreading out as ordered. Something was different. My jet began to slow, not by my control. The controls felt heavy, like pushing through thick syrup. "Controls are heavy," Ramirez said. Morales confirmed, his voice trembling. The craft ascended gracefully, almost invitingly, and we found ourselves climbing after it. Past 40,000 feet, then 50,000, the stars appeared closer and brighter. My oxygen gauge flickered, signaling the thinning air. "We can't keep this up," Morales warned. "We're going to stall out." The music changed, softer now, almost pleading. The craft stopped, hovering silently. We circled at a careful distance. "It's waiting for us," Ramirez muttered. Waiting for what? Suddenly, images flooded my mind, not pictures, but impressions. Shapes, colors, emotions, a sense of profound loneliness and desperate searching. "It's not hostile," I said quietly. Morales challenged me. "How do you know?" I just knew. The craft's glow intensified. More images came, Earth from above, storms rolling across oceans, cities lighting up at night, then darkness, silence, a warning, something needed to be done. "We need to respond," Ramirez insisted. "How?" Morales asked. We didn't know, but we knew we had to try. Here's the rewritten version. We returned to base in complete silence, each of us struggling to comprehend what we'd just experienced. The debrief was tense, with higher-ups skeptical until the flight data confirmed our account. To this day, I can't explain exactly what happened. It began during a routine mission. Something was reaching out, though we didn't understand its intent. Instinctively, I grabbed the beacon override, a small emergency device for sending distress signals. I activated it, broadcasting an unencrypted pulse, the only action that seemed right in that moment. The craft responded immediately. Its glow intensified, and music swelled with an almost joyful quality. It began ascending rapidly, pulling away from us and vanishing into the stars within seconds. The music faded, leaving only our engines' hum and the vast, empty sky. "What just happened?" Morales whispered. "I think we answered," I replied. Whatever we encountered wasn't trying to harm us. It was attempting to communicate, to connect in a way we couldn't fully comprehend. The music, the sense of something beyond our understanding, it's haunted me ever since. Weeks earlier, I'd been on a hiking trip with friends, a long-planned escape from everything. We chose a remote national park with no cell service, seeking quiet and isolation. The trail was barely marked, requiring constant attention to stay on course. We carried compasses, knowing phone GPS was unreliable in such terrain. Midway through our second day, strange things began happening. Sarah noticed her compass behaving oddly. At first, we dismissed it as a cheap, unreliable device. But then Matt checked his, same issue. The needle spun slowly, unable to settle on a direction. My compass did the same, despite no wind or apparent interference. Something was definitely not right. We were hiking through dense woods when our compasses started acting strange. There were no big metal structures around, so we couldn't explain why they weren't working. Rig. HT. At first, we joked about being in the Bermuda Triangle of the forest, laughing off the weird magnetic interference. But these compasses weren't just broken. They were all pointing consistently in the same fixed direction. The needles seemed to be struggling, fighting to align toward a specific spot. Our curiosity took over, and we decided to follow where they were leading, even though it wasn't part of our original route. The terrain was challenging but manageable, uneven ground and thick trees everywhere. We'd pause periodically to check the compasses, and they'd continue pointing in that same precise direction. It felt deliberate, like something was guiding us. After hiking for about an hour, the atmosphere changed dramatically. The air grew heavy, almost oppressive, as if a storm was imminent, except the sky remained completely clear. An unnatural silence surrounded us. No birds, no insects, just our footsteps crunching through the underbrush. Sarah was the first to comment on how strange everything felt, and we all agreed something was off. Then we discovered it, a perfectly circular patch of bare ground about 10 feet across. Surrounding trees looked healthy, but nothing grew within this circle. The ground appeared almost burned, yet not quite. Right in the center lay a metallic object partially buried. The disc was about the size of a car tire, lying flat. Its surface was dull, darker than brushed steel, with intricate markings that weren't random symbols but precise, deliberate patterns. None of us wanted to touch it, but we couldn't look away. The closer we got, the thicker the air felt, pressing against our skin. Sarah claimed she heard a low hum. Initially, I heard nothing, but Matt said he felt vibrations through his boots. When I stepped closer, I finally heard it too, a faint, almost musical sound just at the edge of hearing. It didn't sound mechanical. Something about it felt different, otherworldly. We didn't talk much on the hike back. When we got to the trailhead, we agreed not to tell anyone. Who would believe us? We didn't take any pictures, and the compasses didn't record their movements. All we had was the memory, and even that felt like it was slipping away. The day had started normally enough. We were alive and arguing about what to do next. Matt wanted to dig up the strange object we'd found. Sarah suggested we mark the spot and report it when we got back to civilization. I just wanted to leave. Something didn't feel right. It was like the thing was watching us, even though it didn't have eyes. Curiosity won out, and we started clearing away the dirt. As we dug, more of the object was revealed. It wasn't just a disc. It was part of something much larger, embedded deep in the ground. Patterns covered the exposed surface, and a hum grew louder. It wasn't deafening, but enough to make your chest vibrate. Then the markings started to glow. It wasn't a bright glow, more like a soft pulse, like the embers of a dying fire. But it wasn't random. The pulses followed a pattern, almost like Morse code. Matt tried to record it on his phone, but it wouldn't turn on. None of our electronics worked. Even Sarah's watch had stopped. That's when we heard the noise. It wasn't coming from the object. It was coming from above us. A deep rumbling sound, like something massive shifting in the sky. We looked up, but there was nothing there, just the empty blue sky. But the sound didn't stop. It grew louder, closer, like it was circling us. Panic set in. Matt tried to cover the thing back up, but the dirt wouldn't stick. It was like the ground had turned slick, almost oily. The hum became a steady tone, and the glowing patterns pulsed faster. We backed away, too scared to keep digging, but too curious to run. Then everything stopped. The hum, the glow, the sound from above, everything went silent. The air felt normal again, and the compasses started working. The thing in the ground just sat there, dark and lifeless, like it had been before. But I swear, as we turned to leave, I felt it watching us. Not with eyes, but with something else. I don't know what we found, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I hear that hum again, faint and distant. I don't know if it's real or just in my head. But whatever that thing was, it wasn't meant for us to find. And I can't shake the feeling that it wasn't done, that it was waiting. The airbase was isolated, a remote outpost miles from any civilization. Secrecy was the unwritten rule. You didn't ask questions, you simply followed orders. I'd been part of the security detail for months, handling routine tasks and acting as a go-between for higher command. That afternoon started like any other patrol along the perimeter. Then something changed. A low, constant hum began to fill the air. It wasn't like a helicopter or aircraft engine. This sound was different, electric, pulsing through the ground and vibrating in my chest. When I looked up, expecting to see a familiar aircraft, what I saw instead was completely foreign. A metallic craft was descending, unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. Its shape defied explanation, angular yet smooth, almost organic. This wasn't a typical UFO from movies or stories. This looked like it came from somewhere far beyond human design. The base erupted into chaos. Sirens blared, and officers rushed to their positions. The craft crashed heavily, skidding across the desert floor for hundreds of yards before stopping. I stood frozen, unsure if this was real or some elaborate trick. Military personnel quickly surrounded the crash site, establishing a quarantine zone. We were ordered to stay back while command figured out what had happened. Then I saw movement. A small figure emerged from the wreckage, but this was no human survivor. Standing about 4 feet tall, it had impossibly smooth, almost translucent skin. Its eyes were deep black and bottomless. Thin limbs moved with an unnatural, gliding motion that sent chills down my spine. In that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same. I stood frozen, unable to move. The officers around me wore expressions of shock, confusion, and fear. The creature, if that's what it was, seemed oddly calm. It didn't charge or make threatening moves, but simply stopped and tilted its head, studying us as if we were the strange ones. Suddenly, orders rang out to detain the being. No one knew exactly what that meant, but everyone understood it had to be done. Higher-ups shouted commands into their radios, and soon men in hazmat suits moved in with unusual equipment. They used long, thin rods that emitted a strange light and energy field, attempting to corral the creature without getting too close. The being didn't resist. It remained perfectly still, watching us with an unsettling calmness. At that moment, I realized we were completely out of our depth. This was unlike any operation I'd ever been involved with. As the creature was placed in a containment unit, we were ordered to maintain security. Only senior officers were allowed near the crash site, and it was clear that no one would speak openly about what had happened. The airbase transformed into a high-tension hub. Dozens of high-ranking officers from various agencies arrived. Some I recognized, others I didn't. Everyone was on edge. The creature remained in a secure room, and our primary job was to keep everyone away. Hours passed, and strange reports began to circulate. Scientists and researchers claimed the being was attempting to communicate, but not through any recognizable language. It seemed to be sending signals, thoughts, and emotions rather than words. Some officers believed it was a psychological tactic, while others thought it might genuinely be trying to reach out or ask for help. I was eventually called into a meeting with Colonel Morgan. He looked like a man who had seen far too much. His face told a story of experiences beyond ordinary comprehension. The entire situation felt like we were witnessing something far beyond our understanding. The atmosphere had grown thick with tension. Something was wrong, and everyone knew it, but no one could explain what. Hushed conversations in the break room revealed fragments of a terrifying possibility, an interstellar conflict, pursuers tracking something that wasn't supposed to be here. My colleague spoke in a low, serious voice. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with," he said, his face drawn. Radio silence was the official protocol, likely an attempt to prevent widespread panic. But as days passed, it became clear this wasn't a simple containment scenario. Strange changes began to emerge. Guards grew more nervous. Lights in the containment room flickered unpredictably. Odd sounds, tapping, scraping, suggested something was trying to break free. The base felt suffocating, charged with an unspoken dread. Then it happened without warning. The alien, desperate and using some incomprehensible form of mental communication, somehow influenced the guards. Some screamed, others stood frozen, staring blankly into nothingness. In an instant, the security detail was incapacitated, and the creature escaped. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Helicopters swarmed overhead. Search parties fanned out across the base. The order was clear: find the alien, dead or alive. No one discussed the potential consequences, but everyone understood the stakes were catastrophic. When the search ended, an eerie silence descended. The creature was gone, vanished without a trace. Some claimed it had left voluntarily. Others whispered about it being taken back. But the truth remained elusive, lost in the shadows of that strange, terrifying encounter. When everything was over, the base returned to normal. No one spoke of the incident, and those involved were quietly reassigned or dismissed. I was left wondering about the choices we made. What if we had acted differently? What if we had listened to the creature or helped it when it asked? In the end, we sealed it all away, burying it deep under layers of secrecy. Sometimes when I lay awake at night, I wonder what we've really lost by keeping it hidden. I never expected to get famous. Like many others, I started posting videos just for fun. Outfit updates, weird food trends, little glimpses into my life. I wasn't trying to be anything special. I was simply bored and it felt like something to do. Then one day, everything changed. It started with a video I almost didn't post, just me talking about a strange dream. In this dream, I stood in a massive empty room with walls that glowed faintly blue. Tall, thin figures watched me from a distance. I couldn't move, but I wasn't scared. It felt like they were waiting for something. When I woke up, the details were already fading, but the feelings remained. So I grabbed my phone and recorded a quick video, thinking it was weird enough that some people might find it interesting. Nothing more. The next morning, it had over 1 million views. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I refreshed the app repeatedly, but the number kept climbing. Comments poured in by the thousands. People said they'd had similar dreams, seen the same blue room, the same figures. Some said the way I described it felt familiar, though they couldn't explain why. My follower count exploded. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. Within a week, I hit 1 million. Brands started offering sponsorships. My inbox filled with messages from people who felt like they knew me, like I'd spoken directly to them. It felt unreal. I kept telling myself, it was just algorithm luck. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The dreams didn't stop. If anything, they became more vivid. The figures were tall, with elongated limbs and smooth, featureless faces. Their skin seemed to shimmer like liquid metal, and though they didn't speak, I could feel their thoughts pressing into mine. They wanted something from me, but I couldn't understand what. My follower count started growing with each dream. Every time I woke up, I'd check my phone and find thousands more watching me. My videos trended constantly, even the most mundane ones. A 30-second clip of me brushing my hair would get millions of views. People called me relatable and authentic, saying they felt connected to me in a way different from other influencers. But I felt only confusion. The messages began subtly. First, weird comments on my posts. "They're watching," or "You're the bridge." I thought it was just some internet joke. Then came the emails. No subject lines, no sender names, just blocks of incomprehensible text. "The connection is stabilized. Do not resist. You are the prototype. The others will follow. The message must be delivered." I deleted them, but they kept coming. No matter how many addresses I blocked, they always found a way through. One night, a faint hum woke me. It wasn't loud, but it made my skin crawl. Everything seemed normal. My phone glowing on the nightstand with a new notification. The email contained a video. It started with static, then showed the blue room from my dreams. The camera moved as if someone was walking, the figures standing in a circle, heads tilted toward the lens. One raised a hand, and the screen went black. When it returned, I was in the video. Not a recording, but me, standing in the blue room, wearing the same pajamas I had on in bed. Frozen, staring blankly. One figure stepped closer, reaching out. The video ended. I threw my phone across the room. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was just a nightmare. But when I opened my app, a new video was there, one I hadn't posted. Same video from the email The Blue Room. The figures standing among me tall already had 10 million views. I panicked at Ride to delete it, but the app wouldn't let me every time. I refreshed. The views climbed higher. The comments were full of people saying they'd had dreams about the room that they'd seen. The figures, too, some of them said they'd seen meth. That was when I realized this wasn't just about me. I didn't know what to do. I thought about quitting, deleting my account, disappearing completely, but it didn't feel like that would stop anything, whatever. Wash happening, it was bigger than meth. The dreams kept coming, but they were different. Now the figures weren't just watching meth. They were showing mething cities covered in light, strange machines that moved like they were alive. Stars I didn't recognize. I felt their thoughts more clearly, like they were trying to teach me something. They called it the bridge, and I lost the key. I don't remember how. It finally got out one night. The dreams stopped. The figures were gone, and the blue room faded away. My follower count leveled off, and the strange comments disappeared. It was like Hey decided I wasn't useful anymore. I still don't know what they wanted. Maybe they were testing me. Or maybe, if failed their test, all I know is they're still out. They're watching, waiting for someone else to become their bridge. I've stopped posting. I don't even use a social media anymore. Sometimes I wonder if they're still keeping an eye on me, but I try not think about it. The blue room is gone, and I'm just glad I got out of lot. I sell roasted chestnuts on a busy street corner in the city. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills. My cart sits at the intersection of two crowded streets where office workers rush past, parents wrangle their kids, and tourists snap pictures of everything. I like the noise and movement. It makes the day go faster. Most people don't stick around long. Just grab a paper bag of chestnuts, maybe smile, maybe nod, and keep going. But some nights, the crowd thins out and things get strange. It started about 3 weeks ago when a man approached the cart. Tall and thin, wearing a dark coat, he didn't say anything, just stood there staring at me. His face was pale, his eyes too wide, too shiny. I thought maybe he didn't speak English, so I smiled and held up a bag of chestnuts. "One bag?" I asked. He didn't respond, just tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out exact change, and placed it on the counter. I handed him the chestnuts, and he walked away without a word. At first, I didn't think much of it. Plenty of people are quiet, especially in the city. But then the next night he came back, same thing. 2 nights later, another strange customer appeared. A woman who looked remarkably similar to the first man. Tall, pale, with an intense gaze that seemed to be solving some internal puzzle. She paid with exact change and left without touching the chestnuts. That's when I started noticing something off about these customers. Their movements were unnaturally smooth, almost like they were gliding instead of walking. Their faces were too still, lacking the small twitches and expressions that make people look alive. They were too perfect, too controlled, like living mannequins. By the end of the week, more of these silent customers began appearing. They always came alone, always paid with exact change, and never ate the chestnuts. I felt uneasy, though I couldn't explain why. They weren't doing anything overtly threatening, just standing there, staring. Then one slow evening, everything changed. A man in a gray scarf approached my cart, and before he even pulled out his money, I felt a strange pressure in my mind. It was like someone was pushing through my thoughts, trying to dig into my memories. Suddenly, I wasn't just thinking my own thoughts anymore. His consciousness seemed to merge with mine, flipping through my memories like pages in a book. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My mind felt split open, my private memories and thoughts spilling out uncontrollably. Fragments of my life surfaced. My sister I hadn't called in weeks, the time I shortchanged a customer and felt too embarrassed to correct it, the scar on my hand from burning it on the cart stove. The pressure vanished as quickly as it came, the man collecting his chestnuts and departing without a word. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind endlessly replaying the encounter, trying to understand something about his gaze felt deeply unsettling, like he knew me in a way no one ever should. These weren't ordinary people, that much was clear. Over the next few nights, I watched them closely. They moved differently, never lingering, never interacting with each other. Every time one approached my cart, that same mental pressure returned. Softer now, but still present, skimming the edges of my thoughts without diving deep. One night, I decided to test them. I focused on an old cartoon's theme song while handing over chestnuts. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if hearing my mental humming, then walked away. They were reading my thoughts. No words needed. They already knew what I would say. The realization terrified me. Paranoia grew with each encounter. I tried blocking my thoughts, but the harder I tried, the more it felt like they controlled my mind. A tall, pale woman approached one night. Something inside me broke. I slammed my hand down, demanding to know their purpose. She didn't react, just met my eyes with that familiar, intense pressure. She placed exact change on the counter, left without chestnuts, and disappeared. I was shaking, nearly quitting. But curiosity burned stronger than fear the next night. I confronted a man in a black coat. Grabbing his ice-cold wrist, I demanded answers. No words came, but I felt his response. Pure, wordless curiosity. They hadn't come to hurt me. None of them were here for violence. They were simply studying, watching how people lived, observing our world. They didn't understand speech like we do, instead using thoughts as their primary communication. To them, this was normal, but to me, it felt like an invasion. 2 weeks have passed since that night, and they haven't returned. Yet I can't stop thinking about them, about how they peeled back my mind like an open book. They left no physical harm, but something else remained. A haunting question that won't leave me. What do we owe to privacy and consent when encountering beings who perceive the world so differently? I still sell chestnuts on the same street corner. Every time a tall figure moves through the crowd, my heart races. I don't know if they'll come back, but if they do, I want to believe I'll be ready. My love for hiking runs deep. Years of solitude in the woods, far from city noise, have been my sanctuary. That's why I went to the park that day, another routine trek along a familiar trail. But something felt different from the start. The morning's weather seemed off. An unusual stillness hung in the air, though I initially dismissed it. Hours into my walk, past old trail markers, the feeling intensified. The forest itself seemed different. Trees unnaturally quiet, the river moving with an almost suspended motion. The trail led me to a secluded riverbank, trees pressing closer, creating an enclosed space. The water was startlingly clear, the kind of clarity you rarely encounter. I might have passed by without a second glance, but something pulled me closer. Just steps from the water's edge, I saw a figure. At first, I assumed another hiker had chosen the same path. But as I approached, I realized how wrong that assumption was. The river flowed quietly as I approached, and something caught my eye that didn't seem quite right. At first, it was just a blurred shape among the trees and shadows, a silhouette that didn't move. As I got closer, details emerged that were unlike anything I'd ever seen before. The figure sat cross-legged by the riverbank, completely still, yet radiating an intense presence. Its posture was rigid but calm, staring directly at the water. I couldn't make out its face, but something made the hairs on my neck stand up instantly. What struck me most was how the figure seemed to be covered, not in fabric, but in something that defied description. Light seemed to bend around it, making the figure look almost like it was part of the landscape itself. It shimmered and blended with the surroundings in a way that was both beautiful and unsettling. My legs refused to move. I wanted to turn back, to run down the trail, but something held me in place. A strange calmness washed over me, as if I were being hypnotized by the absolute stillness of the scene. Then it moved, not suddenly, but with a deliberate acknowledgement of my presence. Its head turned, and in that moment, everything changed. I wasn't hearing words, but receiving a message directly in my mind. It felt familiar, yet completely alien, like understanding without language. The message was simple and direct. Something is coming. But it wasn't a warning filled with fear or panic. It was a statement of fact, as matter of fact as telling someone it's going to rain. The urgency was palpable, yet completely devoid of emotion. As quickly as the connection happened, it ended. The figure turned its gaze back to the river, leaving me standing there, completely stunned and uncertain of what had just occurred. The ground trembled ever so slightly, like something far off was shifting. I felt it, not heard it, this time. The air grew thick and cold, heavier than before, as if the world was holding its breath, just like the forest had been earlier that morning. I knew I wasn't supposed to speak or ask questions. The figure's presence faded, and a strange pull tugged at my chest. Not physically, but as if the earth itself was trying to get my attention. Something was coming, and I knew it was time to leave. Walking away from the riverbank, I couldn't take my eyes off the creature. It wasn't human, not like anything I'd encountered in science fiction or folklore. Yet I understood it wasn't dangerous. It simply wanted to share a warning, and now that warning was delivered. My mind raced as I walked back down the trail. What did it mean? what was coming. A quiet certainty settled over me. There was no urgency in its message, no panic, but the feeling was unmistakable. When I reached the main trail, I looked back. The figure was gone. The forest had returned to its calm state, the air lighter, as if nothing had happened. But I knew something was wrong. I couldn't explain how, but I knew. That night, sleep eluded me. The message echoed repeatedly. Something was coming. The next day, local news confirmed my strange experience. A massive landslide had wiped out a section of the nearby mountain trail. The destruction was unprecedented, though thankfully no one was hurt. I'm still uncertain whether the creature was warning me about the landslide or something else entirely. Its cryptic message continues to haunt me, leaving me with more questions than answers. It's been a few months, but I still think about that night every day. The cancer diagnosis a year ago wasn't even surprising. I'd been feeling off for a while. When the doctors told me stage 4, with maybe 6 months at best, they didn't sugarcoat anything. It wasn't a fight anymore, just waiting. Chemotherapy drained me completely. I lost weight, couldn't keep anything down, and spent most days lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling my body slowly betray me. My family tried to stay positive, but I could see the truth in their eyes. The weight of it all followed me like a shadow. I tried to keep going for their sake, but even the simplest tasks became impossible. I couldn't remember the last time I felt healthy. Then one night, everything changed. It was late, maybe around 2 or 3 in the morning. My body ached in ways I didn't know were possible. My chest felt heavy, my head was pounding. I hadn't slept properly in days, just lying there with my eyes wide open, staring at the dark ceiling and wishing for some relief. That's when I heard something. At first I thought it was my mind playing tricks, but the sound was different. It wasn't from outside. No cars, no sirens, no normal noises. It was inside the room, like something was shifting in the air. I couldn't see anything at first, but there was a faint humming, almost like an electric motor or a distant drone. It didn't feel right. It felt wrong, yet somehow familiar, like something I'd heard before but couldn't quite place. This wasn't just an ordinary moment. I don't think I was meant to see that creature, but I'll never forget the look in its eyes or the message it gave me. Something was coming, and whatever it was, I wasn't ready. I haven't been back to that trail since, and I don't think I will. Maybe I was meant to see it, maybe I wasn't, but something was definitely coming. My body was completely unresponsive. I tried to sit up, but I couldn't move. My weakness was overwhelming. My eyes frantically scanned the room, searching for any explanation of what was happening. That's when I saw it. Standing at the foot of my bed was something beyond human comprehension. Over 7 feet tall, its form was unlike anything I'd ever encountered. Not solid, but shifting like smoke or liquid, constantly in motion. No disc or nebble eyes, yet I felt its intense gaze penetrating me. An overwhelming presence filled the room. The air itself seemed to thicken, creating an oppressive atmosphere. Immediately, I knew this wasn't a hallucination or fever dream. This was real. As the figure moved closer, I remained frozen. I sensed its intentions, not hostile, not angry, but something far more complex. An ancient, indescribable essence radiated from it. When it reached out, its hand-like appendage hovering just above my chest, communication transcended words. It offered me a cure, complete healing from my cancer, a way out of the slow, miserable decline I'd been enduring. Life again. But something felt off. The offer wasn't simple. This entity wanted something in return. A price, a sacrifice, not just a medical transaction, but something profound. It wanted to fundamentally alter my humanity. My soul would be compromised, changed forever. I thought about everything. My family, the experiences I'd miss, my children growing up, my exhaustion from suffering. The temptation was immense, but the cost was too great to ignore. Another season changed, and as the sunrise crept over the horizon, I reflected on a moment of desperation that had nearly consumed me. The pain was overwhelming, pushing me to consider options I never thought I'd entertain. But something deeper stopped me, my core beliefs, my very essence. When the strange figure appeared, offering what seemed like a miraculous cure, I instinctively knew the cost was far greater than physical healing. Without speaking a word, I rejected its offer. The entity paused, almost as if contemplating my response, then slowly began to fade. Its shifting form dissolved into the air, leaving behind only a faint, strange trace. Weakness still gripped me, but I could move again. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead as I sat up, processing what had just occurred. The next day brought unexpected hope. A doctor's visit revealed the cancer had retreated. The tumor wasn't gone, but it had shrunk. I had a chance. I've never told anyone about that night. How could I explain an encounter with something beyond human comprehension? An alien-like being offering healing, but at a price too steep to consider. Every day since, I've wrestled with the what-ifs. Would accepting have granted me more time? At what cost to my soul? One thing remains certain. Whatever visited me was no simple healer. It was something ancient, something far beyond our understanding. The weight of that choice haunts me still. My life's work has been archaeology, a profession far from the glamorous treasure hunts portrayed in movies. It's tedious, careful work. Hours spent meticulously removing layers of earth, cataloging fragments, hoping for significance. Most times, nothing remarkable emerges. But this time was different. This time, I discovered something I was never meant to find. Out in the desert, our archaeological dig seemed routine at first. Broken pottery, stone carvings, and scattered animal bones were typical finds. We were methodical, knowing that even the smallest detail could dramatically alter our understanding. About a week into the excavation, we discovered something unexpected, a hidden chamber not detected in any preliminary scans. Its entrance was sealed with a massive stone slab covered in unfamiliar symbols, unlike anything I'd encountered in my years of studying ancient scripts. When we finally opened the slab, we found an interior that immediately felt strange. A table made of an unusual dark, smooth material stood at the center. Laid out meticulously upon it were documents that defied conventional archaeological expectations. These weren't ordinary records. They were crafted from a thin, translucent substance resembling flexible glass. The writing was precise, almost mechanical. It wasn't random scribbling, but something deliberate and structured. Something about the chamber felt off. The air seemed heavy, and the walls emitted a faint, unsettling hum. Back at base camp, we began analyzing the documents. The decoding process was painstaking. Then Sarah, our team's linguist, made a breakthrough. What we'd assumed was a language was actually an intricate code. As we started deciphering it, the true nature of the documents became clear. These weren't just historical records. They were a treaty, but not between human civilizations. This was an agreement between humans and beings from beyond our world, dating back to a time long before recorded history. Beings that had made contact with our planet millennia ago, documented in a way that challenged everything we thought we knew about our past. The symbols themselves seemed almost alive, subtly shifting when observed closely, a detail that only added to the document's mysterious nature. A war had disrupted everything, and this treaty was its aftermath. The details remained fuzzy, but the agreement promised coexistence with specific conditions. Something called the balance needed to be maintained by humanity, though its exact meaning eluded me. Initially, we dismissed it as another mythical narrative, like ancient tales of gods and monsters. But then the messages began arriving. First came radio transmissions, not voices, but strange tones. Dissonant and unsettling, we initially assumed it was satellite interference or station noise. Yet the sounds started forming deliberate patterns, revealing themselves as a signal. The second message arrived through our communication system. This time a voice spoke, deep, resonant, in an unknown language. Despite not understanding the words, we comprehended its emotional core. Anger, disappointment, a stark warning. That night, nobody slept. Camp silence hung heavy, punctuated only by wind whispers and equipment hums. I stared at documents whose symbols seemed to shift mockingly, guarding their secrets. The next day, something felt wrong with the sky. Sunlight appeared dimmer, shadows unnaturally sharp. An unspoken sensation of being observed permeated our collective awareness. When they arrived, everything changed. In my tent, I felt an abrupt air pressure drop. The chamber's humming intensified. Stepping outside, I encountered beings unlike any imagined alien stereotype. Tall beyond comprehension, they shimmered between light and shadow, hovering silently. One approached me. Paralyzed, I couldn't move or speak. As it raised what might have been a hand, I felt its consciousness enter my mind. The message was clear. We had broken the treaty. No anger radiated from this encounter, only profound sadness. I'm a single mom with a 7-year-old son, Luke, and life's always been a challenge. Working extra shifts at the diner, taking care of him, keeping everything together. It wasn't easy, but we made it work. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. Everything changed about 3 months ago. One night, after a long shift, I was sitting in the living room reading while Luke slept. The house was dark except for the lamp beside me. I was halfway through a book when I heard something outside. The noise was out of place. Slow, deliberate footsteps with an almost mechanical rhythm. I shouldn't have gotten up. It was a quiet neighborhood, not much traffic. But something about the sound made me pause. When the porch light flickered, I knew something was wrong. Then it happened during the dig. We were all frozen, standing like statues as these beings moved among us. They didn't touch anything, didn't harm anyone. They just observed. Suddenly, they were gone. The humming stopped, and the air felt normal again. But we knew they weren't finished. We left the site the next day, grabbing only what we could carry. No one spoke. We all understood the same thing. The beings were watching, waiting. They weren't angry, not yet, but something was coming. The organization that funded the dig took over. We were told not to talk about what we'd seen. I don't know what happened to the documents, and I'm not sure anyone will believe me, but I had to write this down. Maybe it's a warning, maybe just a record. One thing I know for sure, they're still out there, and they haven't forgotten. It's hard to talk about this. I never thought something like this could happen to me. I wish it hadn't. But I need to remember, even if it's something I'd rather forget. The porch light flickered 3 times, an odd signaling pattern that quickly faded to darkness. My heart raced as I walked to the window, scanning the empty street where only wind-rustled trees moved. I tried to dismiss the strange moment, convincing myself it was just an old house with faulty wiring or my imagination running wild. Returning to my book, something unexpected happened. A voice emerged, not from outside, not from the air, but from within my mind. It wasn't my thought, but something distinct, clear, calm, distant, yet intimate. "Do not be afraid," it said. I froze completely. My heart thundered, but strangely fear wasn't what I felt. Curiosity consumed me. The voice wasn't threatening, it felt purposeful. "We need your help," it continued. "You are the one we've chosen." Time seemed to suspend during those moments. When the voice vanished, I snapped back to reality, switching on every light in the house. My brain struggled to process what had just occurred. I checked on Luke, sleeping peacefully, and grabbed my phone, desperate to make sense of things. Was I losing my mind? I scanned news sites, searching for explanations about technology or mental phenomena, but found nothing. The experience felt too real to be stress or exhaustion. Strange occurrences followed in the subsequent days. Unexplained sensations of being watched, phantom footsteps, whispers with no source. The house itself seemed to change, not physically, but in some intangible emotional atmosphere. During one evening while preparing dinner, the voice returned. "We are here," it said, feeling more immediate and tangible. Nervousness replaced my initial shock. "We are in you," it continued. Suddenly, everything crystallized. This wasn't just a voice. Something was inside me. They hadn't chosen me randomly. There was purpose behind their selection. The voice began revealing fragments of a larger understanding, piece by deliberate piece. Something deep inside me knew this wasn't random. They had been watching, waiting, and told me I possessed the perfect qualities to help them. At first I was skeptical. It seemed too incredible to be real. But as they spoke, my understanding grew. The voice wasn't singular, but collective. A species far from Earth had been observing us for years, and they needed someone like me to bridge the gap between their world and ours. Their intentions weren't hostile. They needed human empathy. They believed I was the right one because of my ability to understand and feel deeply. It wasn't just about being kind. They explained that human emotions, love, pain, fear, were crucial to understanding them. I was to become their host, their ambassador, creating a connection with humanity. But there was a complex price. They wouldn't simply leave once they settled in. This would be emerging. My personality, emotions, and sense of self would become intertwined with theirs. The implications were overwhelming. Luke needed me, and I worried about bringing something alien into our lives. Yet simultaneously, I felt a profound sense of responsibility. It seemed like my destiny, like I had been chosen. The voice always insisted I had a choice, but it didn't feel that way. My life was no longer entirely my own. I contemplated the consequences extensively. How would Luke react? How would the world respond? How much of myself would I lose? But I understood their mission. They weren't seeking world domination or intending harm. They needed someone who could genuinely connect, communicate, and help. After careful consideration, I agreed, not hastily, but with deep reflection. They promised never to hurt me, and the transformation would be gradual. The changes wouldn't be immediate, but they would be profound. I started noticing little things after it happened. My thoughts felt clearer, more focused. Sometimes I could sense things around me in ways I hadn't before, like knowing what people were feeling even before they spoke. With Luke, I could tell when something was wrong, even when he didn't say anything. The voice wasn't as loud now, but it was always there, a constant presence in the back of my mind, always watching. I'm still me in some ways, but parts of me have definitely changed. I think differently now, understanding things in ways I couldn't before. Some days, I feel distant from myself, like my emotions aren't entirely my own. The alien presence inside me hums quietly beneath everything I do. Balancing this with being a mother, with living my life, is exhausting. It's hard to tell where I end and they begin. Luke remains unaware, and I don't plan to tell him. I don't think he would understand. The long-term effects are still unknown, but turning back isn't an option. I was chosen for something bigger, and somehow that makes it easier to bear. Yet every day, I question my choice. It all started on a normal camping trip. 4 of us, me, my brother Ethan, and our friends Mike and Jenna, chose a spot deep in the woods. We wanted clear skies for stargazing, not because we were experts, but because it was a good escape from the city. The first night was peaceful. We set up camp, made a fire, and talked late into the evening. The sky was crystal clear, more stars than I'd ever seen before. A few shooting stars streaked across the darkness. Everything felt calm. The second night changed everything. At first, it was subtle. The air grew colder, despite the forecast. The woods fell silent. No wind, no insects, no rustling leaves, just absolute silence. We were sitting around the fire when Mike noticed something strange about the sky. We all saw it then. Something was moving up there, something that didn't belong. The stars weren't where they had been before. They shifted like ripples spreading across a pond after a rock drops in. Something felt off. Ethan tried to explain it as an atmospheric event, but none of us believed that. The stars weren't just distorting, they were bending and twisting as if someone was stirring them with an invisible spoon. Jenna wanted to capture the moment, but her phone was dead. Our electronics were useless. Even the flashlight flickered and died. The fire behaved strangely too. Its flames stretched upward, pulled by an unseen force, then froze mid-dance. The lights remained the same, but the warmth vanished. We stood frozen, unable to speak. Then the ground began to vibrate. This wasn't like an earthquake. The rhythm was too precise, like a slow, steady heartbeat pulsing through our shoes. Oddly, nothing around us moved. Trees stood perfectly still. No cracks appeared, just that unnatural, rhythmic thrum. Jenna spoke first, saying she felt dizzy. Mike agreed. I started to feel it too, like we were standing on something not quite solid. The forest seemed to have transformed into a mere image of itself, with us trapped inside. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt real. Suddenly, the sky split open. One moment it was rippling, the next it peeled back like a cosmic zipper. Behind it was nothing, not space, not more stars, just an endless, colorless void. We were paralyzed, unable to look away. A massive shape emerged, not a ship, but a floating form of light and shadow. It constantly shifted, never holding a single shape, sometimes a sphere, then a spiral, then a towering structure. Not solid, not transparent, just present, hovering silently above us. The ground's vibrations stopped, but now a sound emerged, a deep hum that wasn't just heard, but felt. It resonated inside us, vibrating through our bones, a sensation more than a sound. The night was still and cold when everything changed. Mike went silent, his face frozen in terror, and the rest of us felt the same paralyzing fear. A strange shimmering began to form around our campsite, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, but this was different. It created a dome that enclosed us and part of the surrounding forest, warping everything beyond its boundaries. Trees bent and stretched, the ground seemed to tilt, and time itself felt strange. Our campfire stood frozen, its light neither fading nor flickering. A low hum grew louder as tiny sparks of light began appearing and disappearing in the air. High above, a floating shape hung motionless, shifting and changing. Then soft, misty beams of light descended from it, moving with deliberate purpose and scanning the ground. When one swept over our campsite, I experienced a bizarre moment of weightlessness, suspended yet still standing in the same spot. As suddenly as it began, the phenomenon started to collapse. The humming faded, and the shimmering dome began shrinking, pulling inward toward the shape overhead. Our campfire flickered back to life, and the woods returned to normal. Wind sounds resumed, and the cold air felt natural again. The floating shape pulsed once, like a deep breath, then slipped back through a void in the sky that sealed itself instantly. Stars snapped back into place, and the night became ordinary once more. We sat in stunned silence, staring at the fire, each processing the inexplicable event differently. Jenna believed it was advanced technology, Mike thought it was an unknown natural phenomenon, and Ethan refused to discuss it at all. At first light, we packed up and left, none of us wanting to spend another night in that place. Even now, I can't explain what happened. When I look at the night sky, I can't help but wonder if something is still out there, watching and waiting for the right moment to return. I've been a pilot my entire life, flying planes for decades. It wasn't a military or commercial gig, just pure passion for being in the sky. After years of cockpit experiences, I decided it was time to retire. One last flight seemed fitting, a quiet, peaceful journey to say goodbye to something I'd loved for so long. The early morning takeoff was stunning. Soft, golden sunlight spread across the landscape as I lifted off, feeling the familiar planes hum beneath me. For the first time in years, I felt completely calm. The world looked small from up there, and I was finally at peace. Everything seemed normal initially. My radio was off, and I was focused solely on the flight, enjoying the solitude with just clouds as my companions. But then something changed. A strange sensation crept in, a feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. At first, I dismissed it as imagination. Then I saw it, a tiny dot in the distance, moving differently from any aircraft I'd encountered. This wasn't a commercial flight or a military jet. It was something else entirely. As it drew closer, I realized how massive it was, far larger than anything I'd ever seen. Its movement defied everything I knew about aviation. It seemed to hover rather than fly, behaving in ways that made no sense. Despite my years of experience navigating challenging conditions, from thunderstorms to equipment failures, this was completely unprecedented. I should have turned back. I should have flown away, but I didn't. I remained frozen, watching as it slowly approached, unable to look away. Something about this felt fundamentally wrong, unlike anything in my decades of flying. The craft was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Sleek and almost glass-like, it glowed and shimmered in the light. No seams, no rivets, nothing that suggested it was built like any aircraft I knew. It made no engine noise, just a soft hum that seemed to blend with the air around me. I couldn't look away. The object hovered impossibly high, defying the movement of any plane or helicopter. Time seemed to stand still as I watched, suspended in the sky. Something was different about this moment, a presence I couldn't quite explain. Then I felt it, a communication that wasn't sound but more like a vibration or a thought. The craft suddenly shifted, and for a moment I thought it might crash into me, but instead the air rippled, and it was there, just feet from my plane. Strangely, I felt calm, not scared but aware that something important was happening. Images began flooding my mind, a rapid slideshow of unfamiliar landscapes, alien cities, and beings I'd never seen before. At first they made no sense, but gradually emotions emerged. Fear, urgency, a deep sense of warning. The images carried a message more powerful than words. A feeling, not exactly a voice, but a clear directive, filled my consciousness. You must share this. My heart raced as I understood the weight of what I was experiencing. This wasn't just an encounter. It was a communication beyond anything I could have imagined. The craft's presence was both terrifying and profound. It wasn't trying to hide, yet it seemed to exist in a space between visibility and invisibility. I knew, without knowing how, that I had been chosen to receive something crucial. The sky had been my witness, but now silence engulfed me. The craft had vanished, leaving behind a storm of thoughts and unanswered questions. What had I just experienced? The urgency gripped me momentarily, then slipped away like a whisper. Days passed, and the warning echoed in my mind, relentless. I couldn't share what I'd seen. Who would understand? The ground beneath me felt too solid, too real compared to the ethereal encounter above. My mind raced with possibilities. What if revealing this puts everyone in danger? What if no one believes me? Every glance skyward now carried a weight of uncertainty. Are they watching? Waiting? The message burned inside me. You must share this. But doubt gnawed at my resolve. It began with a dream unlike any other. A dark, empty concert hall, silent except for an impossible melody. My violin seemed to play itself, fingers moving without conscious thought. The notes were strange, high, fast, yet not chaotic. Something was trying to communicate through this music. Night after night, the dream returned. Each time I struggled to understand, to capture the elusive tune. The violin felt almost mocking, just beyond my comprehension. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, as if I'd been running a marathon. At first, I blamed stress for my upcoming performance, but the dreams persisted, growing more intense. The melody demanded attention, promising something profound just out of reach. Now I'm left with a choice: speak or remain silent. The sky holds its breath, waiting for my decision. I started scribbling notes from my nightstand, but they didn't make sense. Sharp jumps, odd rhythms, and key changes that seemed unnatural plagued my memory. I spent hours trying to play the piece the next morning, but I couldn't even get through the first few measures. The intervals were all wrong, and the tempo was inhuman. How could I be a professional violinist if I couldn't even play a piece from my own dream? The dreams kept coming every night for a week straight. Each time, the music grew louder, more insistent. It wasn't just the melody anymore. I started hearing harmonies, layers of sound that made no sense together but somehow fit. It was overwhelming. I'd wake up exhausted, my head pounding like I'd been at a rock concert instead of sleeping. One night, I tried to stay awake, practicing scales and drinking coffee to keep my mind occupied. But around 3 a.m., my eyes got heavy, and I found myself back in the hall. This time was different. I wasn't alone. A figure stood in the shadows, tall, thin, almost skeletal. Its skin was pale and shiny like polished stone, and its eyes, if they were eyes, glowed faintly blue. It didn't move or speak, but I could feel it watching me. The music started again, louder than ever. The figure raised a hand as if conducting, and suddenly my bow arm moved on its own. It jerked across the strings in an unnatural, painful way. I tried to stop, but I couldn't. My body wasn't mine anymore. As the figure tilted its head, the melody shifted, growing faster, more complex. I could feel the strings cutting into my fingers, the bow hairs fraying with the strain. When I woke up, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold a glass of water. I started to think I was losing my mind. Days passed, and I avoided my violin, too scared to touch it. But the dreams didn't stop. They got worse. The figure came closer each time, its blue eyes burning brighter. The music grew louder, almost deafening, and the pain in my hands followed me into the waking world. Then one night, everything changed. I woke up, but the music didn't stop. At first, it was faint, like it was coming from another room. I thought I was still dreaming, but when I sat up, I could hear it clearly, the same impossible tune echoing through my apartment. My heart pounding, I followed the sound. It led me to my practice room, where my violin was propped up on its stand. The bow was waiting. The violin rested across the strings, vibrating slightly as if just played. The room felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Somehow, I found myself picking up the instrument. As soon as my hands touched it, music surged through me. My fingers moved independently, playing notes that didn't quite make sense, but this time felt different. My body moved with an impossible speed, faster than I'd ever thought possible. The melody flowed like water, strange, beautiful, and terrifying. When the piece ended, silence crashed around me. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. The figure from my dreams stood in the corner, more solid than I could have imagined. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen. A hand raised and suddenly something entered my mind. A presence spoke without words. Somehow, I understood. This wasn't just music, it was a message. They were trying to communicate something profound, their culture, their history, their very existence. Time seemed to stop. When the figure finally vanished, I collapsed. The music disappeared, but something remained, an imprint in my mind. I could still hear it, feel its rhythm in my veins. Months have passed. The dream hasn't returned, but the melody lingers. I've been writing it down, piecing it together slowly. It's still impossible to play completely, but I'm getting closer. Late at night, I sometimes feel watched, catching glimpses or hearing faint hums that remind me of that mysterious music. They aren't gone, not really, but I'm no longer afraid. Whatever they were, they simply wanted to be heard. It was another late shift at the pharmacy. Nights were typically quiet, just regulars picking up prescriptions or occasional parents grabbing medicine for sick children. The work was mundane, filled with shelf organizing and endless counter cleaning. Little did I know everything was about to change. Around 11:30 p.m., a tall, thin man walked in. He looked ordinary enough at first. Here's the ray, it in text. Something felt strange from the moment he approached the counter. His oversized gray coat hung loosely on his frame, and a prescription slip trembled slightly in his hand. I'd been a pharmacist for over 10 years, but this moment felt different. When he slid the paper across to me, I noticed his blank, vacant stare. The drug name was unfamiliar, Xylon Actin. I'd never encountered it in my years of work. The dosage instructions were bizarre, 2 capsules every 2.5 hours, with a strict warning to avoid sunlight for 17 hours after taking the medication. The doctor's signature was barely legible, and the clinic address seemed to vanish when I tried to place it. "I don't think we carry this," I told him. He nodded as if expecting my response. "Can you order it?" he asked in a flat, emotionless voice. I checked our database. Nothing. Not a single record appeared, which was unusual even for experimental drugs. He simply nodded and walked out, leaving me unsettled. The next night, another patient arrived. A woman this time, but with the same strange demeanor, slow movements, blank expression. Her prescription was identical, Xylon Actin. When I asked if she knew the previous patient, she responded mechanically, "I don't know him." Over the following week, more people came. Each looked pale, moved stiffly, seemed almost unnatural. One wore sunglasses at night, claiming light hurt his eyes. Their voices were uniform, flat, and lifeless. Paranoia crept in. I tried calling the clinic number. It was disconnected. The address didn't exist on any map. These people seemed to materialize from nowhere, each carrying the same mysterious prescription, each looking like they'd been cut from the same strange cloth. Something wasn't right. But what? I was working at the pharmacy when a young woman in her early 20s walked in with the same prescription as the others. Something felt off. I decided to ask her directly what the medication was for. She stared at me for a long moment before answering, "To prevent adaptation failure." When I asked what that meant, she simply turned and started to leave. Panic set in. I couldn't let another mysterious patient slip away without answers. I called out, "Wait," and stepped around the counter to stop her. She moved incredibly fast, almost inhumanly so. Her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with an ice-cold grip. "You should stop asking questions," she said in an unnervingly calm voice. Then she let go and walked out, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding. That night, sleep was impossible. I kept turning over her strange words. Adaptation failure. Why did everything about her seem so wrong? The next day, I started investigating. I looked up every name and address I could think of, searching for some connection. Nothing made sense. But then I noticed something. Every patient had come from the same area, a few miles outside town near an abandoned industrial park. Despite knowing it was risky, I decided to investigate. The next evening after my shift, I drove out there. The place was deserted, rusted fences, broken windows, total silence. I parked away from the main area and walked in. At first, everything seemed normal, just empty buildings and overgrown weeds. Then I heard voices, low, strange murmuring sounds coming from one of the warehouses. I crept closer, staying as quiet as possible. Peering through a broken window, I saw a group of people standing in a circle, but they weren't talking normally. Instead, they were making bizarre clicking and hissing noises, like insects communicating. In the center of their circle was a large container, glowing a faint green. Whatever was inside made my skin crawl. Suddenly, one of them turned, and for a split second, their eyes glowed like an animal caught in headlights. I ran, drove home with my heart racing. The next week, I called in sick and then quit my job. I don't know what those people were or what they were doing, but I wanted no part of it. I haven't seen them since. But sometimes, late at night, I think I hear something. 1962, Cold War. The air was thick with tension, crackling like static electricity. I was part of a 4-man squadron flying reconnaissance missions out of Ramstein Air Base, always watching, always listening. That night, we were on a routine patrol over West Germany, skimming the edge of Soviet airspace. The weather was clear, stars feeling closer than the ground below. Everything was going according to plan until a scrambled order came through. Redirect east to Sector 402. No explanation, just coordinates. We followed, as always. Climbing higher to avoid radar, something strange appeared on my instruments. A blip that didn't move like anything I'd ever seen. It would dart, stop, then dart again, always just beyond our precise tracking. "Anyone else seeing this?" I radioed. Captain Harris confirmed. "Could be a glitch," he said. But it didn't feel like a glitch. It felt deliberate. 5 minutes later, I saw it with my own eyes. A mile out, off our starboard side, glowing faintly in the darkness. Not a plane. Round like a flattened sphere, with no distinct lights, just a soft, shifting glow that seemed almost alive. "What in God's name is that?" Harris muttered. The object zipped toward us impossibly fast, stopping so abruptly it defied physics. It hovered silently near Harris's wing. "Do not engage," Harris ordered, but then it began moving again, almost playfully circling our planes. When it passed close to me, I saw its surface, smooth, seamless silver that reflected moonlight like liquid mercury. My heart raced. I thought I might pass out. Those clicking sounds outside my window now. I tell myself it's just my imagination. But deep down, I'm not so sure. All I know is I got out alive, and I'm not going back. We got the call just after midnight, with higher-ups giving us minimal details, just coordinates in a desert and orders to secure the area. They used the term unidentified object, but their tone suggested this was far from routine. I was part of a 5-man squadron, experienced enough to know when something felt off. The way they scrambled us so quickly and emphasized secrecy only heightened our suspicions. The ride out was silent. We communicated with the object by flashing lights in a slow, steady pattern, but it didn't respond. Instead, it shot straight up, vanishing into the night. We thought it was gone, but then it returned, this time directly in front of us. "Break formation, scatter!" Harris barked. We split off, each of us diving and climbing in different directions. The object didn't chase just one of us, it chased all of us. It would dart from one plane to another with impossible speed, almost like it was studying us. Suddenly, my instruments went haywire. The altimeter spun wildly. The radio filled with static, and the control stick in my hand felt sluggish, as if I was fighting against an unseen force. I wasn't alone. "I've lost control," one of the others shouted. My heart raced. I was certain I was going to crash. Then, everything stopped. The object pulled back, hovering in the distance, seemingly losing interest. "What now?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Stay put," Harris said. "Let it make the next move." It did. The glow around it intensified, then emitted a bright flash. For a moment, I thought I was blind. When my vision cleared, the thing was gone, vanished without a trace. We regrouped and returned to base in silence, none of us knowing what to say. Upon landing, we were immediately debriefed by unfamiliar men. Definitely not Air Force. They took our flight logs, confiscated our helmets, and told us to forget what we saw. "National security," one said. This incident did not happen, Harris argued, but it didn't matter. The next day, we were reassigned to separate squadrons. The official report claimed we encountered an unregistered Soviet aircraft. But I know what I saw. That wasn't anything made on this planet. To this day, I can't look up at the night sky without feeling watched. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't human, and whoever covered it up clearly knew far more than they were letting on. The desert stretched out flat and endless under a star-filled black sky with no moon, just the faint glow of the Milky Way. Above us rolled over unevent terrain, the engines hum cut through the stillness in the distance. A light caught her attention, not natural at all, a soft bluish-white glow, hung steady over the horizon, casting long faint shadows across the sand. Wes stopped half a mile away and approached on foot. The air felt unnaturally cold with a strange metallic taste. As we crested the last dune, what we saw stopped us completely. A small city unlike anything we'd ever seen. Buildings rose in strange angular patterns, their edges sharp and clean walls that seemed to shimmer, almost translucent, like they were made of light instead of solid matter. The entire city pulsed faintly with a glow running through streets and structures. As if to live secure the perimeter, Sergeant Whitman ordered, his voice steady, but his rifle greatly split into pairs circling the city. Closer inspection revealed now windows or doors, just smooth surfaces, reflecting a faint light. Streets curved in impossible ways, looping and twisting with Hanalian logic. Rodgers muttered something about the city being made of energy. I remained silent. Then we saw them, figures moving within dozens, maybe more. They weren't human, tall and thin with elongated heads, their movements too fluid, their forms shimmering and flickering, like the city itself made of light. They're not real. Ezed, though uncertain. Rodriguez nodded, his face pale. Were grouped at the city's edge. While Whitman radioed for instructions, the strange light continued to pulse around, use an impossible landscape that defied explanation. Wes stuck together after realizing our radios were completely dead. No communication, just silence. Whitman's order was clear: no one goes in alone. The city felt wrong from the moment we entered. Strange figures moved around us with deliberate purpose. They walked in precise lines and gathered in open spaces, but they didn't seem to notice our presence. We were like ghosts moving through their world. Walls came alive with three-dimensional projections that flickered like living memories. Scenes from Earth materialized around us. Dense jungles, massive elephant herds, villages with straw huts, bustling markets. Rodriguez whispered in disbelief, but Whitman understood immediately. "It's our history," he said, his voice tight and controlled. Every building told a different story. Some projections showed ancient scenes like pyramid construction, while others depicted modern cities with towering skyscrapers. This wasn't just a record of events, it was a comprehensive documentation of life itself. Plants, animals, humans, weather patterns, everything seemed captured in these shifting images. In the central square, the projections grew larger and more intricate. Walls displayed intense scenes of human experience, brutal battles with soldiers locked in combat, families sharing quiet moments of joy, moments of discovery and disaster frozen in time. Lopez broke the silence, realizing this was more than just historical documentation. The figures surrounding us were bizarre. Up close, they had no discernible facial features, just smooth surfaces where eyes and mouths should exist. Their bodies shifted like static, blending with the city's strange light. Most continued moving, ignoring us completely. Then one stopped. It turned toward us, head tilting slightly, the first acknowledgement of our presence. The expedition wasn't meant to be anything extraordinary, just a few experienced cavers exploring an unmapped cave system deep in the mountains, far from civilization. A local guide told us the caves stretched for miles, with passages ranging from tight squeezes to massive chambers. The first day passed without incident. We descended through a wide gap in the rock face, sloping down into the earth. Cool, damp air carried the scent of wet stone. Then things changed. Something was watching us, or at least I thought it was watching, though no eyes were visible. Its attention pressed against me like a physical weight. Whitman raised his rifle, warning it to stay back, his voice trembling. The figure remained motionless, but a low hum began to fill the air, vibrating through my bones. Projections around us flickered and distorted. Suddenly, a sensation invaded my mind. Not words, exactly, but a profound understanding. Observe, learn, preserve. I staggered back, clutching my head. The others reacted similarly, wincing as if struck by an invisible sound wave. The figure tilted its head, its light pulsing faster. "We need to leave," Whitman said sharply. We retreated carefully, maintaining eye contact with the figures. They didn't follow, but the hum intensified with each step, becoming almost unbearable. Projections blurred into static. When we finally crossed the city's boundary, the hum stopped. The air felt lighter, the metallic taste vanished. We returned to the convoy in silence, each lost in thought. The city glowed faintly behind us, but no one looked back. Whitman tried the radio again, and this time it worked. We reported our experience, but I doubt anyone believed us. The official report buried our encounter as an unexplained phenomenon under layers of bureaucracy. Sometimes I think about that city, what it was doing in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't hostile, but it wasn't friendly either. It was simply there, watching, recording, preserving. And I can't shake the feeling that it's still out there, glowing in the desert, documenting everything we do. Our expedition started like many others, routine and methodical. We marked our route, took notes, and set up camp in a dry chamber about 3 hours into the second day. The cave system was complex, branching in multiple directions. We decided to split into pairs to cover more ground efficiently. I was paired with Eric, an experienced geologist who had been on countless similar trips. While he meticulously collected samples and took measurements, I focused on mapping our progress. Hours into our exploration, we discovered a chamber that initially seemed unremarkable. The space was roughly the size of a small house, with smooth walls and a high arching ceiling. But Eric noticed something unusual. The walls weren't entirely natural. Evenly spaced grooves spiraled from floor to ceiling, appearing melted or shaped by an unknown force rather than carved by traditional tools. At the chamber's center stood an artifact, the only word that felt appropriate. Metallic and cone-shaped with a broken tip, its surface was covered in patterns that seemed alive, shifting subtly when viewed from different angles. At first, I thought it was a trick of our headlamp light, but the movement was undeniably real. We stood in stunned silence, transfixed by the object. Eric, driven by scientific curiosity, wanted to investigate closer. I felt uneasy, sensing something fundamentally wrong about its presence. Despite my reservations, Eric approached, brushing away dust and debris. As he worked, a low hum began to fill the chamber. It wasn't loud, but vibrated deep in our chests. Eric froze, his hand hovering just above the artifact's surface. "Do you hear that?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. The hum intensified. The air grew heavy, pressing down on us. Suddenly, the artifact activated. A deep, resonant sound made the walls shake. Bright, sharp light pulsed from its surface, unlike anything I'd ever seen. Eric stumbled backward, dropping his tools. We both scrambled to the chamber's edge, overwhelmed by the inexplicable phenomenon unfolding before us. The desert was quiet and empty when I first arrived for my geology research. I'd been out in the field for 2 weeks, studying rock formations in this remote, desolate landscape. Stretches of dry land and jagged outcrops surrounded me, a terrain so isolated that you could go miles without seeing another person. That isolation was exactly why I chose this site. Fewer distractions, just me and the rocks. Our expedition took an unexpected turn deep in the cave system. The sound wasn't just noise, it was pure energy that vibrated through my bones, making clear thought impossible. The chamber walls seemed to focus this intense vibration into a single point above an artifact we'd discovered. A blinding flash of light suddenly silenced everything. For a moment, the chamber was perfectly still. We thought it was over, but then a low, distant rumble emerged from far above us. The ground began to tremble, and small rocks and dust rained down from the ceiling. Eric grabbed my arm, shouting something I couldn't hear over the mounting noise. We ran, somehow managing to navigate the tunnels until we reached the main passage, just as the tremors subsided. We found the others looking pale and shaken. They'd heard the sound too, even from the other side of the cave system, though none could explain what it was. We unanimously decided to leave. The artifact was too strange, too dangerous. Nobody wanted to stay and risk discovering what might happen next. Our hike back to the surface was tense. Every sound and shadow made my heart race. When we finally emerged into daylight, a momentary sense of relief washed over me until we saw something in the sky. Just beyond the atmosphere, a faint ripple moved with purpose, like heat waves rising from pavement. It shifted and pulsed as if responding to some unseen stimulus, then vanished in a final burst of light. Eric and I tried explaining what we'd witnessed,